The president said, watch what happens to these deranged scumbags today. And he wasn't kidding. Moments ago, Central Command executed one of the most powerful raids in the history of the Middle East, totally obliterating every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Kharg Island. For reasons of decency, the president says he's chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island, but says if Iran interferes with oil flows on the Strait of Hormuz, he'll immediately reconsider his decision.
A lot of big hits today, a lot of big wins today, as you probably have heard militarily. And I think it's going very well, and we're very good control. We'll see what's happening with the Straits. They continue to try and sabotage their own country in the Middle East, but it's been very, very strong militarily.
Kharg Island's Iran's main oil export terminal. 90% of its oil sales flow out of that island. It's basically the country's biggest cash register, and Trump just hit everything next to it. We told you yesterday, effing with the Strait made Trump more dug in, and we know when Trump draws the red line, he means it. This type of tactical precision strike at the heart of the Iranian economy sends a message. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Ball's in the mullah's court. Trump reiterating a call to lay down your arms and surrender before it gets worse. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs promises to unleash the heaviest night of firepower of the war. Listen.
Today will be our heaviest day of kinetic fires across the operating area. CENTCOM continues to attack ballistic missile and drone capabilities so that they are no longer a threat to U.S. forces, our bases, or our partners. We've attacked over 6,000 targets, and our strike packages continue to launch every hour.
The Secretary of War says we're dialing it up, a 20% increase in strikes. And 99% of the strikes are when we're flying right over the target. And the intel picture is crystal clear.
Our intelligence just gets better and better. That feedback loop feeds itself. And as we refine those targets, it exponentially increases what we can hit and why, to include strategic things the world's talking about and looking at. And it's our job to have a plan for it, which we do, to address it, and ensure that the president has options. We've done that from the beginning in this department.
The largest aerial campaign in decades is happening right now. Hundreds of fighters and bombers, F-35s, B-52s, high in the sky. And more doomsday bombers are surging into theater, capable of carrying 70,000 pounds of munitions each. The mission, eliminate the Iranian military and its ability to rebuild. And here comes the Warthogs, just spotted over Iran's airspace. These are close air support planes that fire 30-millimeter shells at a clip of 70 a second. Absolute destruction, targeting radar, mobile launchers, and boats. Above all these planes, the U-2 Dragon Lady, flying beyond the reach of any Iranian weapon, just gathering intel, our eye in the sky. And for the first time in history, we launched the mother of all precision strike missiles on the mullahs.
In just the first 13 days of this operation, our artillery forces have made history. They fired the first precision strike missiles ever used in combat, reaching deep into enemy territory. They've used Army ATACMS to sink multiple ships, including a submarine, and they've done all of this with the precision and determination that comes from relentless training and trust in each other and in their weapon systems.
The target, Iran's military-industrial complex.
Soon and very soon, all of Iran's defense companies will be destroyed. For example, as of 2 days ago, Iran's entire ballistic missile production capacity, every company that builds every component of those missiles, has been functionally defeated, destroyed. Buildings, complexes, and factory lines all across Iran destroyed.
We're decimating their defense industry. This would be like if someone wiped out Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, their headquarters, all their production plants. We're still in phase 2 of Operation Epic Fury. The defense industrial base is going to get pounded, and so the regime can never rearm. The Iranian leader, Nepo Khamenei, has no response. He's hiding in a cave, nursing his wounds.
Desperate and hiding, they've gone underground, cowering. That's what rats do. We know the new so-called not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured.
Reports say Ayatollah Jr. is comatose. Sources say 1 or 2 of his legs may have been cut off and his liver or stomach ruptured. The Ayatollah, who has the personality of a boiled potato, might be a vegetable. Another report says he's unaware of the war and has no idea he's the supreme leader. The Ayatollah's son might not be even able to cry uncle. Trump told the G7 this: "I got rid of a cancer that was threatening us all. Nobody knows who is the leader, so there is no one that can announce surrender." The Iranians are running out of options. The only card they have left to play is hassle the Strait.
Iran has no air defenses. Iran has no air force. Iran has no navy. Their missiles, their missile launchers and drones being destroyed or shot out of the sky. Their missile volume is down 90%. Their one-way attack drones yesterday, down 95%. And as the world is seeing, they are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with, we have been dealing with it, and don't need to worry about it.
And this just in, the United States moving 10,000 Ukrainian drone interceptors into the region, which should bring the alliance's drone knockdown rate to almost 100%. On the ground, the Iranian population is starting to make some moves. According to the IDF, ordinary citizens are now supplying Israel with intel about drone strike targets. The Israelis have been relying on this all week as they've been hitting checkpoints in the capital. Several members of the Iranian security forces have been killed. Desertion is already a factor, and it's bound to get worse. After the regime's bank got bombed this Friday, there was no payday. Meanwhile, our guys are doing what they do best.
They spoke with the sense of calm pride, purpose, and clarity that tells you clearly they understand the weight of what they're doing and the people who depend on them. I asked these youngsters, these young, awesome Americans, what does that feel like? And one of them just looked at me and said, "It's awesome." No drama, no hesitation. When I asked these soldiers yesterday, what is it that you need from the Secretary and I, they looked at each other, paused for a moment, and looked back at me and said, "More rounds, sir." It was awesome.
The commander-in-chief's been very clear about the mission. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they can't threaten American interests with missiles, ships, and drones. The men and women in uniform understand that, and for the first time in a long time, the commander-in-chief has a clear objective and an exit strategy.
And I had to take an excursion. We had the greatest economy in history. We still do. Oh, this will bounce right back. When it's over, and I don't think it's going to be long, when it's over, this is going to bounce right back so fast.
When are you going to know when it's over?
When I feel it.
Okay.
I feel it in my bones.
The Iranians are stalling their surrender by waging economic terror on the Strait. And after Trump just hit Kharg Island with a brushback pitch, America is surging additional assets into the region. The USS Tripoli is leaving port in Japan and making its way to the Middle East. This is the amphibious assault ships, basically like a light carrier capable of fitting up to 30 aircraft, a full squadron suited for swatting drones and attacking speedboats in the Strait, plus a Marine expeditionary units on board, 2,500 Marines, a ground combat unit, attack helicopters, F-35s, a logistics unit, a command team, which is a sign that the Strait, the coastline, and maybe Kharg Island could see some more action soon. We already have the USS Gerald Ford and the USS George H.W. Bush in the region, plus anti-mine vessels. Some of the most advanced in the world are forward deployed. You're looking at the literal combat motherships. Things can detect a mine like a bloodhound. The Navy could also deploy sea drones that identify mines and blow them up at a distance. The Secretary of War said there's been no evidence that the Iranians have mined the Strait, but Central Command's ready.
The only thing prohibiting transit in the Straits right now is Iran shooting at shipping. It is open for transit should Iran not do that. Now, there's a reason why we chose as one of our primary objectives to destroy the Navy. We understood the ability to interdict shipping is something Iran has done for 40 years. It's key terrain. They've used it as leverage. The world is seeing what they'll do to fight back in that context. And so we've heard them talk about taking various measures, and we're planning for all of them.
CENTCOM wargamed the Strait closure, which is why the generals are completely annihilating Iran's offensive power first, before undertaking an anti-mine and tanker convoy operation. We've done this before. When the Iranians tried closing the Strait during the tanker wars in the 80s, in the battle against the Iraqis, it's like football. You got to block first, open the hole, then run through it. If the military can execute, we'll win the Battle of Hormuz. The air campaign has to come before maritime operations. And Trump says the escorts will be happening very soon. And we might be getting backup. The Italians and the French are already in negotiations with the mullahs to back off the strait. And the British Navy might provide ships for the tanker escorts. The president watching closely the price of oil. Today it closed around $100 a barrel. But preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is more of a priority than oil prices, he says. That's his justification and why he calls the operation a little excursion.
What's your message to voters who may be concerned about the potential for rising gas prices?
Well, I think your gas prices, as soon as that's over, are going to come tumbling down along with everything else. I think it's going to be, you're going to see a very big decrease in the price of gasoline, gas, anything having to do with energy.
If and hopefully when the operation is successful, oil could fall back down into the 50s. That's where Trump had it in January. The cost of living's always been a concern for the commander-in-chief, and he seems confident in the mission.
I think I have tremendous support on this. This is something that's been incredible. I have the best poll numbers I've ever had now.
Yep.
And it's not because of this. I think we've just, the economy is great. It's a little bit of we take a little winding road for a little while, but we have to wipe out the evil. It's an evil curse. They're evil people. And, hey, we wiped out their Navy. We wiped out their Air Force. We wiped out everything there is to wipe out.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.